today is I'm going to have a little news update first. So here's kind of what's going on with the news. Brr, it is cold. Let me get a full screen this here. So here is, you're seeing in that photo, there is a shot of the summit at Mauna Kea. I was up there once on a field trip and didn't have as much snow, as there is now. But I always thought that was one of the most remarkable things about Hawaii, and that Hawaii, you can actually, one of the most amazing things about the Big Island, right, is you can, legally, technically, you can ski on a snowy day on the side of the mountain, and on that same day you could drive down and hang out at the beach in a bikini or swim trunks, depending on your clothing preferences. But it's really one of the most remarkable things. So it has been cold. If you look at this, zoom in here.
Yeah, I want to mention something about that,
sure. Yeah,
so
go.
So last week I went to Hilo for lunch with some friends, and as we were driving back, so there's a lot of snow on the mountain last weekend, and so this is like a thing you'll probably not see anywhere else in the United States. But as we were going back over Saddle Road to come back to the Kona side, we made a game out of it, and the kids and I were counting how many trucks had snow in it. So what people do is they go up to the mountain and they shovel snow into the back of their truck and fill the truck up with snow, and then drive back down the mountain, and the kids play snow in their yards down in town. And so there was 11 trucks that we noticed. One truck had a trailer and the truck. So, I mean, they had like a double load of snow coming down the mountain. And you can tell because there's a big mountain of snow in the back of the truck, and there's shovels stuck into the snow. So it's very obvious, and they're leaking water, but that's a very common occurrence, is you bring this, because it's actually hard to play in the snow up there because it's such a high elevation. It's not pleasurable to have a lot of physical activity. So people will load up their truck with snow and then drive down into town and play snow in their yard.
Oh, it's man, awesome. that is hilarious. And look, I've lived in Hawaii since the mid 80s, and I've never heard of, and I've known about the snow and people go up there and ski, but I've never heard about it. And it makes total sense right now. You go, you get a truckload of snow. And
so if you drive around town on days when there's snow, you'll see people playing snow in their front yards. They're making snowmen in their front yards.
That's hilarious. I never heard about that. That's hilarious. That is what a cool thing. How cool is that, man? That is a couple of shout outs here. We got Robert from, we don't want to hide Scott's beautiful face over here. Hold on a second. There we go. Robert, aloha from California. Hey, Robert. And Jim says 45 and clear and sunny. All right. Hey, 45. People are washing their cars. They're walking around in shorts at 45 degrees in New York City. There's Jeremy from Arizona. Welcome back, Jeremy. Good to see you, buddy. Okay. Jeremy says they do the same thing in Arizona. All right. So it's not just a Hawaii thing. Interesting. Love it. Absolutely. Hey, so back to the weather over here. I want to show you here what we call super cold in Hawaii. You look at the 5-day forecast here. If you look at the highs and the lows, right, you see the highs are going to be looks like at high 70s, 75, 78, and the lows get down to looks like the coldest one is 62. That's the coldest of all, the whole thing, 62, 66. That is what is considered freezing but cold in Hawaii. If it's as Scott was saying earlier, I don't know about you guys. So here, what do you guys do? I've got the long sleeve. Actually, it was really funny. So last night, I wake up at like 1:30 in the morning with literally uncontrollable shaking, uncontrollable shivers, and I just can't stop like shivering. So I put my sweatpants on, put my socks on, put my long sleeve t-shirt on, and the winter comforter, and folded it over myself. So I'm not even like on the bed sheets. I had to do all that to stay warm, and that's what I had to do. Dylan, what do you got? What's your warm weather? What's your cold weather winter suit look like inside the house?
So luckily, I live at some elevation, but it hasn't gotten that bad yet. It is pretty nippy at night, but at most it's sweatpants and a long sleeve shirt. But it's getting there. I think in the next couple of days, it's probably going to get to the point where we're going to have to gear up a little bit more. But yeah, it hasn't been too bad yet. And that's because it's always cool too, right? So like the temperature is always cool at night, cooler at night. So when when it gets cooler, it's not as dramatic where I live.
Yeah. Well, we and I should mention to everyone, this is all relative. There are no fireplaces. We have no house heaters, and we still leave a few of our windows open.
That's the big thing. When it gets cold, just close your windows, right? That's basically what you
Not
do.
all of them. You leave a few open just to get some circulation going. Scott, what's your cold weather remedy?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's turn the ceiling fan off, put socks on, The other night when the wind's blowing, it gets to be a little chilly. The other night I was hanging out with some friends, and I don't have anything other than like short sleeve shirts and maybe an occasional long sleeve one. So I have to actually bust out my snowboard jacket and leave it undone, even though it's like overkill. Everything else I have is not sufficient enough because it hardly gets down into these temperatures. And when it does, it's a little uncomfortable.
You know, one of the most wasted articles of clothing I took with me was a coat. I even had a leather jacket, which I love. Was this really cool Harley motorcycle jacket. Nothing, no insulation whatsoever, but never wore it. Never. It was just too much. All right, let's kind of keep moving on with the news over here real quick. So a couple things, real quick note came out is that Hawaii got ranked in the top 10 most COVID restricted states in the U.S. So not a big deal, but what that basically means is if you're planning on taking a trip to Hawaii, if you're planning on coming over, just know that this place is fairly restrictive. I was talking to my cousin the other night, and she asked me about how it was. And I said, you know, the big thing here is everyone just pretty much wears their masks, and depends on what state you're coming from. That may be a little bit of a surprise, or it may not be a surprise. Most businesses are open. I think everything's fairly open, but it does rank as one of the most restrictive states. That there is a big deal. You're wearing your mask all the time. People always wear their masks here. And I have seen some places that, some stories that say some people that have come here have been a bit surprised by how much that is, but it's become a cultural norm now. The other one is United. United is doing a cool thing here. What's been reported is that United will let Hawaii visitors skip COVID-19 tests screenings with conditions. So what they're saying here, what was reported is that the airline now allows travelers headed for the islands who share a valid negative COVID-19 test before boarding a flight to skip document screenings in Hawaii, which often involve waiting in a long line, and begin their trip as soon as they land. I don't have any more details on that, and I recommend that you reach United directly if that's who you're going to be using. Things can change on a daily basis, but it sounds interesting. United's making a play to have you skip the screening process when you land. It's going to be an interesting competitive juggle here for, I guess, who's going to make it easier for people to come to Hawaii. And then finally, I thought was an interesting story I found is that Oakland's airport has a COVID test in a vending machine. Apparently, you walk up to a vending machine, I guess you slide in $149 bills. You put your credit card in for $149, and you get what looks like to be an instant COVID test. So that's a quick roundup of the news today, and we had a good time to talk with Dylan and Scott about the weather stories. So I would say, folks, this is about as cold as it pretty much gets. Hey, just real quick, real fast, Dylan, what is the lowest temperature where you were living that you can remember in Hawaii? Just the number.
Maybe like 56. You know,
56.
It's crazy cold. Yeah, like high
56.
50s. Yeah.
How about you, Scott?
Yeah, it was definitely mid 50s. I remember, I'll never forget when I first moved to Hawaii. I was living on the Big Island, and I went up to Waimea. I was living in Puako, which is right at sea level. And after several months, I went up to Waimea and got out middle of the day. Wind's blowing. It was chilly, but because you're at a higher elevation, and I remember going, "Oh man, I'm freezing!" And I knew at that point right there, I'm like, "Uh-oh, I'm in trouble. There's no way I can go back to the mainland without something at that point."
When you're freezing in your low 50s,
when it's probably only 65 when you got
my lowest story, my lowest number is 59, and it was like burned in my forever burned in my memory. This had to be 1984, 85. It had to be 84. I'm driving down Kapahulu Avenue, and this was back in '84 when banks used to have those bulbs, those little signs that had like light bulbs on them. Those it wasn't even LEDs; it was light bulbs that would go on and off, and they would show the temperature. And I was driving down, and I saw 59. I thought, wow, it's 59 degrees, and that was the coldest temperature I've ever seen in Hawaii. All right.